Hi, and welcome to the very first week of Carousel's summer production, The Playwright Project. We are so excited to have with us today the man who inspired the whole project from the very beginning to the very end, David Dubczak. Hi, David. How are you doing today?
I'm well, Alex. Thanks for having me here today.
For anyone who might not know you or maybe haven't seen you in a little bit, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure thing. I'm an actor who's been involved in several Carousel theater productions. So I've been on the stage a good number of times. But in my free time, I enjoy writing plays, and I also have a video production company, Conjunction Media, that I've kind of moved my creative efforts into that at the moment. But yeah, so I've written a lot of plays, a lot of screenplays of various lengths and whatnot, and that's what brought me to the Carousel Playwright Project.
Awesome. Well, now that
hmm
we're kind of talking about your involvement in Carousel and the
hmm
Playwright Project itself, why don't you walk me through the inspiration? Where did the idea of getting together, brand new playwrights and having them actually write shows to be performed come from?
Yeah, so in the early summer of 2020, when it became obvious to those of us on the Carousel Theater board that we weren't going to be able to do our regularly planned season, we weren't going to be able to do shows at all. We didn't want to just stay dormant. We wanted to
Yeah,
figure out what were some things, if we can't do this, what were some things that we can do, right? And so we kind of had a long brainstorming meeting, and this is one thing that came out of it is, like, I write plays. If we can't perform a play, how about we get a group of people together to write a play? Kind of power in numbers there. Um,
yeah.
yeah, we have people in our, Carousel family that are also looking for things to do. So, what are some things that we could do together in a safe environment? And so, kind of the thought process of a TV writer's room is where I initially went with this, and then proposed that idea to the board, and that's how that started. Is just to get a bunch of people together to write a play.
Yeah. So we flash back,
hmm
almost well over a year ago. We
hmm
COVID has shut the world down. We're
hmm
suddenly going virtual in a space that Carousel has never
hmm
really ventured into before.
hmm
You helped us out with our fall cabaret that we did, our virtual cabaret. We also venture into this world of writing original shows and guiding people through this
hmm
process. And you guys are meeting virtually over Zoom. What
hmm
was that first meeting like? And then how did you actually go about like figuring out how to help people who have never written something like this before find stories and characters?
It was surprisingly not very difficult for us to figure out how to find stories and characters. In fact, that's why we wound up producing 5 plays instead of just one.
Mhm.
The thought was that we would get together and we would be a writer's room, and uh, we would write one full-length staged play together. Um, and so our first meeting was just, let's come up with some ideas here. And just kind of a brainstorming session, pitching ideas and whatnot. Everybody wound up pitching really good ideas that were kind of personal to them. It didn't seem right for us to just pick one. And so we kind of transitioned then to, let's each write our own individual one act play.
Yeah. So you guys are in the room,
hmm
and what were the steps that you took? So obviously we've
hmm
got I think one person who's actually written a play before, and then we've
hmm
got a few people who have written in the context of like very formal settings. How did we approach creatively producing this? Did
hmm
you have like specific exercises for them or anything like that?
Yeah. Right at the beginning, we kind of approached it through uh, premise and theme, right?
Mhm.
So premise is premise is the interesting thing that makes people want to see your play. If we think of um, I don't know, something like Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. Premise is two people from very different social classes fall in love. That's what makes people want to come see it. So we talked about premise, and then we talked about theme, which is kind of an emotional question that your entire play is written around. So going
Mhm.
back to, Romeo and Juliet, if we think of theme, it's like, can love survive even death? or can love survive in this environment where these two people are not supposed to be in love, right? And so we start talking about theme and premise, and we had a lot of good conversations about that because that's what needs to drive our writing. A lot of times when people start out, they have that really good premise, and then they get kind of stuck in a pattern of what needs to happen next, what needs to happen next. And once you're really clear on your theme and your premise, that's what kind of can drive the rest of your play. So that's where we started out with. Let's see. Once we get into, or we kind of talked about, some dramatic structures, push and pull factors, I like to call them. Have you ever had that feeling when you're reading a novel and at the end of a chapter, they just kind of leave you hanging, and that makes you want to watch more
Oh,
or read
totally.
more?
Oh,
Yeah.
totally.
So, yep. So we talked about how to do some of that in our writing. And then around Christmas time, we had kind of a really fun dialogue activity where I just gave them a picture and I said, write 2 pages of dialogue based on this picture.
Hmm.
And that was something that everybody really enjoyed too. And then by February, we didn't have our whole plays written, but we had enough written that we brought in some of our other Carousel Theater actors to come in on Zoom and do readings of our plays so that we could get some feedback, hear what they felt like by actual seasoned actors.
Hmm.
We would split up parts and we would read them during our meetings and whatnot to give feedback. But now we had a chance to get actual actors who had rehearsed it to come give us feedback, and or just as a writer to hear that. And I do know a few of us really sat down and rewrote huge chunks of it after that.
Hmm.
So, and then the goal was to have the play completely written by April.
Yeah. So you write these plays
Hmm.
in the middle of a global pandemic. You guys are meeting virtually. Do
Hmm.
you think that that affected the way these authors approached their storytelling?
I think it did. I had one participant email me halfway through the process, something like that, and say, "Have you noticed someone dies in every single one of these plays?"
They do. I noticed
Yeah,
that when I was watching them rehearse. I was
yeah.
like, wait a minute, there's a common theme here.
Yeah, and that did lead to some revisions. Once
Hmm.
we realized that together, that we all had this theme of like death and sadness and whatnot, that maybe we didn't necessarily want that. How could we keep true to the play's theme? How could we keep true to the play's premise, but maybe leave the audience in a happier place
Oh
when the play
yeah.
is done? Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely all kind of deal with death and
Yeah.
loss and
Yeah.
reconciliation in an interesting way. And
Hmm.
in my conversations with the playwrights, I've been asking
Hmm.
them about that. And they've all kind of been like, yeah, we just kind of stumbled across it. It wasn't anything we
Yeah.
intended. And I was like, that's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing it's affected by, the fact that we're in a pandemic, we're locked inside, and we're seeing so much loss around the
Yeah.
world. In this process, as a writer yourself and someone who has written at least one show that has been produced by Carousel, if not several others. Do you think that you now look at your own writing process differently? Has it affected how you look at storytelling?
Being able to bring different perspectives into the room uh, is a really valuable experience, because when I'm writing, I try to imagine other perspectives, but it's really my perspective and what I perceive of other people's perspectives. But
Hmm.
being able to work with a group of people to have other people's perspectives influence you um, it's a really interesting way to go about it. And as I continue writing, that does influence how I seek out other people's perspectives to try to write from there.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Okay, so we
Hmm.
we finish our plays right around
Hmm.
mid Marches, right? Is when you guys kind of
Yeah.
got those plays done.
Hmm. Yeah.
It had always been in the plan for Carousel to produce them at some point in the
Hmm.
upcoming season, but we realized that, with people getting vaccinated and COVID kind of very slowly getting more under control, that we might be
Hmm.
able to have an opportunity to produce them this summer. So we
Hmm.
decided to produce them this summer. What has that been like to watch the shows go from basically just ideas in the ether to being on paper to actually being produced and filming them because you're the person actually running the production side. What is
Mhm.
that like?
That is the experience that every playwright wants. You know, so many, I've got a stack of plays that have never been performed, you know, and
Hmm.
that's what every playwright wants, is to be able to see your work on stage performed. Um, Sometimes as a playwright, you don't always. I've been to like readings of my plays and whatnot, and not actually liked the result of it. You know,
Hmm.
where it's like, okay, this is how I pictured it in my head, but uh, I don't like what these actors are doing to it.
Yeah.
um, but I don't think that's what we got here with Carousel. Um, once we turned the plays over to the board, I didn't do anything else with it until I showed up to film them. And so being able to see, going from the page to the full production of it, um, I mean, it's really fun to see. Carousel did it really well. The actors have it's amazing, you know, coming from an actor's perspective too, because when I've done acting, it's always been with shows that have been around for a long time, and other
Yeah.
people have played these characters, right? Yeah, other people have played these characters, other people have seen these shows. This show has existed for a while. And now we are, here's a show to see actors giving it their all in their performance in a with a script that did not exist 9 months ago.
So
What?
cool, isn't it?
Yeah,
Just mind blowing.
wasn't even an idea 9 months ago, and now here's actors doing it for real. That's the
Yeah.
coolest thing. Yeah.
And these playwrights, I mean, you've done a wonderful job of guiding some brand new authors through the process of writing because these plays
Mhm.
are just so good.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
There's so much like love and care that was put into it, but then they also managed to, make you laugh and they pull your heartstrings. You've done a wonderful job with these playwrights. I am so excited for not only them to see the final product, but for everyone to see that
Mhm.
final product. And you've
And
kind of
you know,
personally, oh, wait, sorry.
let me just say real quick, the love and the care that's put into them is a reflection of the love and the care of the writers themselves. You
Hmm.
know, oftentimes when you're writing, I like to say it's you're cutting yourself open and bleeding all over the page and hoping somebody likes it, you know,
Yeah.
and the result of that is it's a reflection of the people who were writing it, because that's the kind of people they are.
Yes, and you've kind of experienced this before. I mean, you have experienced it like firsthand because you wrote Delusions of Power, which then
Hmm.
we produced in 2019.
Hmm.
Sorry. So we produced that in 2019. So what was that process like for you? Because then you got to experience writing it firsthand and then
Hmm.
pull someone else through the process as well.
Yeah, I one of my, I guess, biggest regrets from Delusions of Power, and it was a situation I didn't have any control over, but I wound up having to act in it. And as I was writing it, as we were gearing up to produce it and everything, I was really looking forward to the experience of, I guess, being able to sit back in the audience and watch other people enjoy it, right? And then I wound up having to act in it, which is, you know, I had I had a great time acting in it. It was a role that
Mhm.
I liked and suited me, and I guess, you know, I knew the play. But uh, you know, as I was advising the other writers too, um, you know, Karen Hooper, for example, was talking about how if we performed that, she would be backstage and helping with hair and makeup between scenes and stuff. And I'm like, you know what? No, don't. If you're going to teach someone, or if you're going to do the makeup and hair, teach someone how to do that for you. You go sit out in the audience and watch this,
Mhm.
you know? And it's just
Yeah.
kind of, it's that perspective I was trying to give them too.
Yeah, that perspective. Okay, so we've wrapped filming.
Hmm.
We're currently in the process of editing right now
Hmm.
when this video actually goes up on our Facebook page. The
Hmm.
shows will have been edited and our first show premieres this Friday, Game Night by Karen Hooper. Um what are the thoughts going through your head while you're editing and like putting everything together and just like putting a nice, beautiful bow on this package for these playwrights?
I get to see it before anyone else does.
That's true.
Yeah, a lot of the actors' performances are polished in the edit, which is kind of cool with the video editing. And so as the video editor now, I'm the final hand in making sure that this looks good for the public.
Mhm.
And as a writer who has had his things performed before, going into that initial performance, you are so incredibly nervous because you've written it, because you want people to like it, but you don't know for sure if people are going to like it until that first performance, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, when we were doing Delusions of Power, I couldn't sleep the night before. I was nervous as all get out. I've acted in quite a few plays. I have never gotten stage fright. I was nervous as all get out the day of opening night. And then at the end, once people started laughing and people clapped at the end and people enjoyed it, such a rush of relief. And now,
Yes.
yeah, I want the writers to have that same experience.
Yeah.
Maybe not the nervousness, but I want people to enjoy it for them, because as a writer,
Yes.
you want your work to be enjoyed.
Of course. Well, thank you for coming out and talking with me today. This has been so exciting. I am so glad that Carousel has had the opportunity to
Mhm.
not only produce something like this, which is brand new and completely out of the box for Carousel, but then we've also been able to help some people actually go through what I think was just an incredible experience, an incredible opportunity. Thank you for guiding
Mhm.
everyone through that. And just like I said, our first play premieres this Friday at 7 p.m. on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. That's Carousel Theater of Indianola. It is Game Night by the Karen Hooper. And I hope you continue to tune in and watch each show as they premiere this weekend and through every weekend to the first weekend of August. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you, Alex.